Hi everyone, my name is Stephen Powell. I'm Senior Product Manager here at Get Satisfaction, and I'm happy today to provide an introduction to one of our new products, which is the Push API. So in today's webcast, we're going to be covering an introduction to the Push API and what it can do, an overview of how you can set up the Push API in your community, and a few case studies to kind of bring things to life and make things real for you. So just diving right in, what is the Push API and why did we develop it? So just taking one step back, really the reason that we developed the Push API was to enable others to innovate on our community platform. And the way that we did this was we created a developer tool called the Push API. And what the Push API allows you to do is push your community's activity stream into other business processes or systems that you have in near real time. So examples of the activity stream is really all of the activity that's happening in your community. So it could be topics that are getting created, it could be topics that get updated, people me tooing, and also replies and comments that are generated on topics. So all of this activity you can push in real time or near real time into your kind of critical business processes. Second, we developed the Push API on a kind of loose standard called webhooks. Webhooks are basically user-defined HTTP callbacks. For the nerds in the audience, that probably makes sense to you. But again, it's using well-known, simple web standards, and your webhooks are really increasingly being used by more and more companies just because of the simplicity of the design and just the increased adoption of web-based applications. And finally, the reason that we also went with this architecture and that we built this is that it really allows you to create integrations in days rather than weeks or months. And we'll see one or two examples of how that's actually the case. But the idea here is allow you to innovate on your community and bridge the gap between your community and your critical business processes. So let's take a look at how webhooks work. So step one is activity occurs in your community. So as I mentioned, that could be a topic gets posted in the community by one of your members. Then what happens is a webhook that you've configured posts that event information, so that new topic create event, in real time or near real time to your servers using HTTP or HTTPS. Third, what happens is a script on your server that you've developed processes that event, and then finally, it does something interesting or useful in your systems. And those systems could really reside anywhere. They could be on premises, in your environment, or they could be hosted in the cloud. But the idea is that it's a publicly accessible server that we can access. So, really, in these four simple steps, you're basically done. And so the critical thing is that step three, the script that you need to develop, with webhooks, it's very lightweight. Again, it's using open HTTP standards, and so hence the quick time to market in developing these things. So on that last step, which systems are we talking about? And here's some example uses of how you could implement the Push API and integrate with your critical business process. So some examples. So under workflow, you might want to integrate your community with your CRM system, or with your bug tracking system, or with a product management or feature tracking tool that you have. So all of these allow you to basically bridge the gap between your community and, let's say, your customer service department, your product development team, or your product management team. On the collaboration side, you might want to integrate your community with your blogs or microblogs, like Twitter or Yammer or Chatter potentially, or with group chat applications. And so again, your employees are collaborating internally in your community or externally with customers, on these platforms. And if you can basically integrate the activity that's happening in your community with these platforms, your employees and customers can collaborate even more around solving problems and answering questions. Alternatively, you might actually have just legacy or homegrown systems that you have built internally. So you might actually have a lightweight CRM system that you've developed yourself, or some other type of workflow system that you built internally that you want to feed the activity from your community into. So again, this is another great use of the push API. So let's take a look at how you actually set up a webhook. And it's pretty simple. So step one is you need to create a publicly accessible URL endpoint that can accept GetSatisfaction JSON posts. And so as I mentioned in that overview before, you need to develop a script, essentially, that you can host on a server somewhere that we can access over the internet. And what we'll do is every time an event happens or activity happens in the community, we will post a message in JSON format to that endpoint, and then that script can process the event. So after you've created the script and you posted it somewhere, the second thing you do is come into your integrations page in your admin section, and you configure a webhook in GetSatisfaction. And it's really as simple as putting in a name for the webhook, that URL endpoint that you've configured, and which events you actually want to create push API calls based on. And that's it. So it's really pretty simple to get this started. So let's take a look at what some of these events actually are and what in the output that they generate. So here's a couple example events that we have in the first upcoming release of the push API. We'll be adding more over time because obviously there's a lot of activity that can happen in your community. So the first one could actually be a manual export event. So this is actually one that needs to be triggered by a moderator. And so you can imagine going into a topic in the community. A moderator might want to export that system to an external system or take some action on it to kick it off into another business process that you guys have internally. And so the way you would do that is you configure a manual push API event. And what would happen is when you go into the topic, there'll be a button that says, export to this external system. You click on it, and that creates this push API call. So this one's pretty useful for things like bug tracking, exports, because obviously you don't want to export every problem in the community into a bug in your bug tracking system, or other similar examples. The next three that I have here, topic create, topic update, and reply create, are actually all automated push API events. So as soon as these things happen in the community, as soon as a topic gets created or a topic gets updated or somebody creates a reply, we will automatically push out data about that event to the URL endpoint that you've configured. And then as I mentioned, over time we'll be adding more events. You can imagine things like a new member was added to your community or other similar types of events that you might want to take action on in your other systems. So let's take just a quick look at what the output is that one of these events actually creates. So here's some example JSON that's posted to your URL endpoint based on a manual export. So you can see it's just a simple JSON object, and this is one that's manually exporting a topic. And so you can see just right at the top, there's this thing that says event type, manual export, and then within the topic, we actually go into detail about just all of the aspects of that topic. So the description of the topic, the author of the topic, a URL link to the author's dashboard are all there, and you can use these in your script to do interesting things. In addition, there's some advanced settings that you can use when you're setting up a webhook. So one of those is authentication. So you may, given that you're opening up a endpoint on your server, you may want to have authentication on that endpoint just to make sure that nobody else is posting erroneous data to that endpoint. So the way that we do that is using, at least for now, basic authentication, where you have a username and password that you can configure as part of the webhook. So every time the webhook gets triggered, we'll use basic auth to do that. And obviously, you can configure the webhook to use SSL, so those parameters will be secure over the wire. In addition, you can actually pass query parameters on every webhook push. So this is a way for you to, let's say, pass different parameters or set up different webhooks for each event. So as an example, let's say you're going to create an integration with your um, product management system. You might want to be able to export both features, new feature requests, and potentially bugs. And you might want to do those things separately. So you may set up two different webhooks, and each of them have a different query parameter that's getting pushed out to your script. So really, this allows you to do a lot of interesting things on your side with your push API script. In addition to being able to push out topics from the community to your external systems, you can, in addition, actually show the status, or meta information about those external records actually within GetSatisfaction. So let's say, for example, with Jira, let's say we were going to integrate with Jira. This is our Jira integration. We export topics from the community and create bugs in Jira. We've set up a separate API that allows you to basically link those two records together. So the topic in GetSatisfaction, being able to link that up with the issue in Jira. And so you could do this with actually any webhook that you set up. You could basically export a topic to an external system, and then you could display metadata about that external record within GetSatisfaction so that a moderator knows what's going on. So, Bug Tracker is one example, but let's say a product management system could be another one. Let's say you're trying to get an idea from the community into a feature in your product management system, like Pivotal. You might want to actually display the the Pivotal Tracker ID here, with a link directly to that story. Or just similarly, it could even be with our CRM system. You might want to link directly to the CRM case, as an example. So this really is pretty powerful because it allows you to, provide moderators in the community with really a status, or a quick link to, to that external record. It really allows you to tie those two systems together. So now we have an overview of how the Push API works and some of the power that you can do with record linking. I actually wanted to take a look at two recent case studies of how people have used the Push API. So the first one is actually the example I was just mentioning, which is Jira. So one of our development partners, Customware, actually developed the Jira integration on our behalf. And they used the Push API and the record linking API to do that. And what they built was a plugin that you could basically install in your on-premise Jira implementation that would then create, as part of that plugin, a URL endpoint that you could configure on the GetSatisfaction side. And so what that allows you to do is export with a single click GetSatisfaction topics, into Jira issues. And at the same time, have that quick view of metadata about the Jira issue from directly within the topic in GetSatisfaction. So this is a great example of actually how we use the Push API. It was our first use of it, and we actually did some packaging up of the webhook on our side. But it's a good example of the kind of power that powerful application that you can create using webhooks. The next case study I wanted to mention was a company called HipChat. So HipChat does group chat and collaboration software. And so these guys are part of our beta program right now. And what they built was a webhook that basically allows you to notify your group chat room of community activity in real time. So you can imagine, you have a group chat room where you're collaborating with, your colleagues, your fellow employees, and as you're collaborating with them or talking with them, you see activity that's coming up in the community. So you can see that, hey, somebody suggested an idea in the community, and then you can quickly have a conversation around that. It's actually a very cool story not just because of the actual product that they built here, but it was actually in the time frame that they built it. So from the time that they actually got a request from their customer for this type of integration to the time that they had developed it, put it in production, and got the customer up and running on it was actually 3 days. So that's pretty amazing, and that's actually a great example of why we built this architecture and the kind of time to market that you can have with these sorts of integrations. And if you want to learn more actually about this integration, you can check out their website. So as I mentioned, the Push API is currently in a beta program, a private beta program right now. But if you have a great idea for an integration or an application of the Push API, we would really love to have you be part of this beta program. So if you're interested, please email us at beta@getsatisfaction.com, and we would be happy to have you guys join the program.